Met Office warning in place for the northeast, where gusts of 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little more in some places, during Friday evening and into Saturday morning. There is a warning for the snow as well. Those kind of winds could cause some structural damage, certainly make for some disruption on the roads, potentially cause some power issues also. There will be this zone of wet weather then sinking south on Friday night. That will still have some snow mixed in, mostly hills, but there could be a little bit at lower levels, so that's an extra hazard. Details of that snow on Saturday still uncertain. It does look as if there won't be much at low levels, and if there is, it'll melt fairly quickly. But still a cold wind blowing on Saturday. The weather warnings are all on the Met Office website. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, will France admit it has blood on its hands over the migrant crisis? That's coming up in my digest before my superstar panel of the former London mayoral Tory candidate Sean Bailey, Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler weigh in. Plus, in Uncancelled, is it fair to blame ordinary Brits for the Channel tragedy? Dr. Rakib Hassan on the alarming rhetoric emerging from the left. As America celebrates Thanksgiving, one of the most polarising figures in US politics, Rudy Giuliani, will reveal all about the last days of the Trump administration, the Donald's mooted return to the White House, and whether Biden can hold on for a full term in an exclusive interview at 10:20. After the Commons' so-called baby ban, should mums be able to take their newborns to work? Ex-Strictly Come Dancing star and businesswoman Christina Rianoff and broadcaster and mother of three, Bev Turner, are among those duking it out in the clash. And as ever, I want to hear your opinions too. Dan at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. It's been a bit of a question amongst the Westminster bubble this week. Is Boris Johnson okay? Well, body language expert Judy James will analyse his fateful speech. Then GB News star Mark Dolan explains why he's still backing the PM and thinks you should too. That's in The Outsider. Has Nicola Sturgeon become too arrogant to successfully lead Scotland? And have we reached peak COVID madness now that we're demonising mask slips? We'll debate both those topics and more in the Media Buzz. Plus, we'll take a look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and crown the greatest Britain and Union jackass just before the end of the show. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. I actually can't think of anything worse than spending a night on the tiles with lots of stuffy politicians. But last night, at the Spectator's Parliamentarian of the Year Awards, there were a couple of viral moments, at least. First, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid made this gag at Matt Hancock's expense, and I'm always there for that.
Thank you so much, Fraser, for that. Thanks for this award. I wasn't really expecting that, but thank you. Thank you all very much. And I think I should probably just thank those people that are responsible for allowing me to come back. The Prime Minister, my wife, the CCTV guy at the Department of Health, and the Sun newspaper. But calm down.
That's actually made us lolcano. I love that. I love that. And after being named Backbencher of the Year, Dancing Queen Theresa May brought back the Maybot on stage. Oh, my goodness. I love the Maybot, you know. But I'm sorry, Theresa. It still will not make up for you completely botching Brexit. My special digest on the French reaction to the migrant crisis is next before the superstar panel take me on. Tonight, it's the political commentator Dominique Samuels, former London mayoral candidate for the Conservative Party, Sean Bailey, and the journalist and broadcaster, Sam Dowler. It's a busy show, but before all of that, let's get the news headlines with Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Dan. These are the latest headlines. Britain is to test travellers from South Africa for a new COVID-19 variant, which is said to be the worst one we've seen so far. Officials are concerned over a rapid rise in cases in the country, which is expected to be added to England's red list for international travel imminently. UK scientists believe the variant could evade immunity built up by vaccination or prior infection. No cases have as yet been found in Britain. The Prime Minister has written to French President Emmanuel Macron setting out 5 steps to prevent channel crossings. The measures include joint maritime patrols in each other's territorial waters and better real-time intelligence sharing. Boris Johnson also wants immediate work to begin on an agreement to see those who do reach the UK are swiftly returned to France. He hopes the measures will reduce the incentive for people to put their lives in the hands of traffickers and prevent tragedies. GBNews understands that a body found on a beach near Calais today is not thought to be linked to yesterday's small boat sinking, which left 27 people dead. The identity of the victim is unknown, but they are believed to have attempted to cross the channel. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is scheduled to meet French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin over the weekend.
I have literally, Madam Deputy Speaker, just spoken again with my French counterpart, Minister Darmanin, and I've once again reached out and made my offer very clear to France in terms of joint France and UK cooperation, joint patrols to prevent these dangerous journeys from taking place. I've offered to work with France to put more officers on the ground and do absolutely whatever is necessary to secure the area so that vulnerable people do not risk their lives by getting into unseaworthy boats.
French fishermen are planning to block the Channel Tunnel and the port of Calais over the ongoing licence row with the UK. Downing Street says the government has contingency plans in place in case of a disruption to supplies. The French are demanding more rights to fish in British waters. Tube passengers will face widespread disruption from tomorrow due to a series of strikes being launched by London Underground drivers. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union will walk out in a dispute over claims that rotas will affect their work-life balance. A 24-hour strike on tube lines Central, Jubilee, Northern, Piccadilly and Victoria will start at 4:30 a.m. on Friday, with further action planned in the coming weeks. You are right up to date now. Back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Now, as you know, I've been critical of the government's inability to stop the boats on Tuesday night, one day before an almighty tragedy in the Channel. I declared the illegal migrant crisis a national emergency. For over 18 months, as most of the mainstream media and the bulk of our political leaders have looked away, I have been advocating tougher policies, including turn back where possible and offshore processing as a surefire way to smash the despicable people smuggling trade. It's a disgrace that it's taken the death of 27 poor souls, including 7 women and 3 children, to move the story to the top of BBC bulletins and finally focus political will on finding a solution. As the Conservative MP Sir John Hayes put it to embattled Home Secretary Priti Patel in the Commons today, wasn't Brexit meant to see us take back control of our borders and stop having to rely on the Europeans to keep us secure?
We need to disrupt those criminal gangs, we need offshore processing of claims, and we need to turn around boats in the Channel, as the law allows us to do. For people who voted to take back control have every right to ask the question, if you can't protect the integrity of the borders, what can you control?
But my real rage today is reserved for the French President Emmanuel Macron and his government, who have spent the past year attempting to exploit the migrant crisis for political gain and to try unsuccessfully to humiliate post-Brexit Britain. Oh, so predictably, today both Macron and his ministers tried to blame Britain.
We ask for an increased involvement of the British because I would like to remind you that we are holding the border for the British in a way, and that all these women and men do not want asylum in France. We offer it to them, and all those who want it are processed in centres set up around Calais and Dunkirk, and we will strengthen the means involved in our sea rescue operations.
Great Britain and France must work together. We must stop being the only ones who can fight against smugglers. We are telling our Belgian friends, and this is why I was in Belgium for some time last Monday. We are telling our German friends. We are waiting for a government, and we hope they get to it very soon. And we are telling our British friends that they must help us fight against smugglers who are international and who are operating across borders.
Macron's weasel words are totally meaningless when the French police unfathomably continue to allow small boats packed with illegal migrants to set off on a daily basis, and the French Navy are known to help shepherd some of those vehicles into British waters. His total lack of action, even though we're paying him £54 million to patrol his own coast and have offered to send our own police to help, is particularly ironic, given that Macron is more than happy to send his French armada against British fishermen while ignoring the people smuggling catastrophe in the Channel. So Boris Johnson is correct when he accuses France of not doing enough to stop the smuggling gangs who are literally getting away with murder. But that's only part of the story. The swashbuckling Boris of old would have had the political might and willpower to stop the boats, just like he delivered Brexit. The Australian experiment of 2013 proves that offshore processing, yes, while controversial, makes such an aim completely achievable. Australia went from 20,000 arrivals in a year to none, zero, within just 2 years. So yesterday's tragedy means the mainstream media and the leader of No Opposition, Keir Starmer, have finally caught up with the crisis that I've been talking about for 18 months. Tough words are no longer enough. Only tough and perfectly executed policies are going to stop the migrant crossings. The political careers of Priti Patel and even Boris's chances of staying in number 10 are riding on it. To take me on now, my superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Sean, I want to come first to you because this is your party, and you must admit you've dropped the ball.
I'd actually say the French need to do their role. The Home Secretary's laid out the money, it's there, and if the French were really serious, 3 things would happen. First, Macron would stop saying there's a gold rush to Britain because we have a generous benefit system. Secondly, he would let our border forces put their feet on French soil to stop people getting in the boats in the first place. And thirdly, I'll go one bigger than you. This is an international crisis. We need to stem the flow at the source. We need to smash these people smuggling gangs once and for all, because while there's money in it for them, they'll continue to do that. And the French have a role to play in this, and we should all make sure they play that role.
Dominic, I agree with all of that, but it is only half of the issue here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, unfortunately, our very lax policies have made the UK a very, very encouraging place that these poor souls want to spend tens of thousands of pounds, want to spend their life savings on to get here.
Yeah.
And that encourages the people smugglers.
Exactly. And with regards to what you mentioned in Australia, the way that they saw that was that they saw it as they were smashing the economic model of the smugglers by turning back the boats and resorting to offshore processing. And with regards to migrants crossing the channel, this hasn't really just been a problem in the last 2 years. It's been a repeated problem. And, you know, we've had the Conservatives in power. So why hasn't there been a focus to stop people turning up here illegally? It's all well and good saying, you know, the French have this responsibility because they do. However, our government also has a responsibility.
Well, that's the thing,
to
Sean.
do it.
We have been patient with the Conservative Party. I certainly have. When Priti Patel became Home Secretary in 2019, she said she was going to make this route unviable. Since that moment, Sean, there are now 10 times the number of people crossing.
There's two things to say. Firstly, the Prime Minister's intervention is correct. He's written to the French to say, here's what you should do, here's what we will do to ramp up and get this done. And of course, the Home Secretary has a number of things she's had to go through. I believe that she's actually done it quite well. Yes, could we get a better result? Of course we could. But she can't just march over to France and say, you do this. France is a sovereign nation and they have a legal and a moral duty.
No, but there's nothing to stop us offshore processing.
They have broken that. We have... Look, Dan, the reason people come here is because we are a great nation when it comes to human rights. We treat people correctly. And before we take that step, I think the Home Secretary needs to be given the space to resolve the situation as it is.
She's been given 2 years.
I believe it'll take longer to do that. And the big step is to go back to the source. If we do not challenge these gangs on their own soil and make it uneconomical for them, the flow
part
will
of
continue.
that, and Australia proves this, is by making it very, very clear to these poor souls that if you are going to risk your life by crossing the channel...
You won't be successful.
You're not going to end up in Britain.
Listen,
you're going to end up in Albania, you're going to end up on an island.
Is there room for turn back of the boats? Of course there is. Is there a next step that means we do offshore processing? Of course there is. But right here, right now, we have an agreement with France and that has to be played out.
Sam, I think we need to do it quickly. We have to get this offshore processing in place because this is becoming a real crisis, Sam. 30 people, 27 people died yesterday.
I agree with you, but there is also, 20 years ago, there were far more illegal crossings trying to come over and to obviously enter our country. And I was on this show not so many weeks ago where we were talking about how Priti Patel said that our border patrol should be turning boats away, of course, regardless of whether they were going to drown, etc. And of course they weren't, and they said they weren't going to do that.
No.
So this I also think using Australia as a model is a great idea.
Sam,
like the size of
they
Australia,
stopped the boats.
The size of
They stopped the
Australia
boats.
compared to the area where they're coming here, like Australia is the size of Europe.
Well, they had 20,000 arrivals in 1 year and they stopped the boats within 2 years. But I just have to clarify, because we need to be clear on this turn-back policy. If the UK were to do this, they would absolutely ensure that the poor souls ended up safely back on French beaches. They have to follow international maritime law. There is no suggestion from Priti Patel that they would not be following that law. So why do you have an issue with it?
Explain to me. They're obviously spending, thousands and thousands of pounds.
Well, 54 million.
Yeah,
54 million, and that's
but the migrants are spending.
Oh yes,
thousands of pounds.
sorry, up to £20,000
per person on these boats. I mean, surely there must be, or like our government or the French government must come up with a way that they can, like half of that money could be used to get across safely and to go through the right channels. Surely, with that amount of money involved.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think realistically, when we're talking about the French, they're going to be perfectly happy to shoo people over here because They don't want to deal
You're
with
making it sound like they don't. You're making it sound like they're letting them get on the boats.
Have you not seen the footage?
We don't see the boats going.
There's footage of them literally encouraging them to go. And
yesterday,
reports of them of border patrol officers actually helping them across.
But
and
that's why I say the PM's intervention today to ask for British border forces to be able to put their boots on French soil.
It should be a joy.
But this isn't about trusting the French. This isn't about trusting the French. This is about taking control. It's about taking a step. And remember, we have a reputation in the world because we behave properly. And before we get to turning people away, which I concede is a very necessary step, before we get to offshore processing, let's make sure we bottom out the agreement we have. And that means getting our boys and girls over there on French soil to prevent them getting in the boats in the first place. And the long term is to smash the international...
How long do you think we should be negotiating with France, trying to make sure they stick to their end of the deal before we do start actually taking...
No, it doesn't take time. To allow us to operate on French soil is a decision the French could make tomorrow morning, and we could be there the following afternoon. But that's different. Now, if they don't make the decision, then we can take the extra steps that you want to. But right here, right now, we operate in a world where we are part of the international community, and this is the commitment we've made, so we need to follow that through. If the French don't pick up their part of the commitment, let's take the next big step.
Sam, final word to you.
I don't think it's fair to say that it is the French is, it's your problem now because of Brexit. I think that's ridiculous, obviously, because,
that's what they're saying.
But people are...
They don't care.
But people are... Of course they care. They care,
we
care that people are dying.
They care
that people are dying. Of course they care that people are dying, and they are travelling through their country, and obviously they have, the problem at Calais as well. But I don't think...
Macron
these still humanitarian
wanted to stop the boats, he would have done a proper job with the police.
He's going to build a wall on the beach,
Sam, did you not see the footage yesterday? Plastered on the front page of all of the newspapers. Literally, a people smuggling gang putting 40 people in a floatable dinghy in front of a police vehicle. They let that dinghy go into the water.
What are they supposed to arrest them?
They allowed it to get into British territorial water.
Of course they should arrest the gang.
At that point, the RNLI have to pick up the pieces and take it to the
disable
shore.
the boat. They could disable the boat.
Of course they could. And look, it is a humanitarian crisis, but this is also a political crisis. And the boats have to be stopped at any cost now. Sam Dowler, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, my superstar panel. They are here all night. But coming up, was Boris Johnson's muddled speech really as bad as it looked? Body language expert Judy James weighs in on what's really going on with the PM. But up next in The Clash, after Labour MP Stella Creasy highlighted the Commons baby ban, should mums be allowed to take their babies into work? Ex-Strictly Come Dancing star Christina Rianoff, broadcaster and mother of three Bev Turner will duke it out. But let us know what you think. Dan at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me using the handle at GBNews. Back soon.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Earlier today, the Met Office named Storm Arwen. We're particularly concerned about the strength of the wind, especially later tomorrow and into Saturday morning. There will also be some snow in places from this storm system. It's coming in from the north, so it's bringing in colder air, but it's really the winds really picking up later on Friday. Those isobars really squeezing together initially across Scotland, but increasingly further south. Some very strong winds during Friday night. Back to tonight, and the winds are picking up and bringing some rain across much of the UK. But ahead of that rain, clear skies will allow a fairly extensive frost across East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures may actually start to rise a little by dawn as the cloud spills in. It's going to be a cold day on Friday and a fairly grey morning with outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales. Brighter skies follow, but so do the strong winds and increasingly snow showers over northern Scotland. In fact, that snow turning more and more persistent over northern Scotland, mostly over hills, but even at low levels there could be some, and routes like the A9 will be particularly treacherous with those strong winds making for blizzards. There'll be a bit of brightness in the afternoon, but it's not going to feel warm. Those winds are the biggest cause for concern widely across northern and western areas. Later on Friday, gusts of 50 to maybe 65 miles an hour, and an amber Met Office warning in place for the northeast, where gusts of 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little more in some places during Friday evening and into Saturday morning. There is a warning for the snow as well. Those kind of winds could cause some structural damage, certainly make for some disruption on the roads, potentially cause some power issues also. There will be this zone of wet weather then sinking south on Friday night. That will still have some snow mixed in, mostly hills, but there could be a little bit at lower levels, so that's an extra hazard. Details of that snow on Saturday still uncertain. It does look as if there won't be much at low levels, and if there is, it'll melt fairly quickly. But still a cold wind blowing on Saturday. The weather warnings are all on the Met Office website. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
The Clash now. And Labour MP Stella Creasy has caused a storm by taking her 3-month-old baby into the House of Commons, leading to the exposure of the so-called Commons baby ban after being reprimanded by parliamentary officials.
Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority refused to fund appropriate maternity cover for myself on the basis that people needed to be able to speak in the chamber. Yet today, in order to speak, I have had to abandon my baby proxy leave vote, or else be reprimanded by the House authorities for speaking in the chambers, making Parliament one of the few workplaces in this country where when a new mother comes in to do a Keep in Touch Day, she is rebuked, not supported.
Was to be changed, she took her son Pip to the Late Night Spectator magazine Parliamentarian of the Year Awards. That's just weird, right? Well, there has been backlash too, of course, with Tory MP Scott Benton questioning while Stella, who claimed she doesn't have maternity cover, needed to bring her son to work, saying parents who get paid a fraction of what you do pay for childcare and juggle responsibilities so they can go to work. What makes you so special? So tonight, we're asking, should mums be able to take their babies to work? With me to debate this is television and radio broadcaster Bev Turner, former political consultant and writer Suzanne Evans, and professional former Strictly dancer Christina Rianoff. Bev Turner, I agree with you on most things, but I just cannot understand the logic of why someone should be able to take their baby to work. I'm sorry, if one of my staff members was cradling a little baby when they were trying to help me put my show together, I would not be impressed.
I think listening to her talk, and when you actually see the pieces that she's written since that occasion, I think it's very clear that Stella doesn't feel that she had a choice. And that's where this whole system, I think, goes wrong, because Parliament has to drag itself into the 21st century. We shouldn't really, in a way, we shouldn't be talking about this as a mother's issue. We should be talking about it as a parent's issue, first and foremost, because remember, guys, like, men have babies too. And I would love to see a dad with a 3-month-old baby as an MP in Parliament, just to even this out a little bit. But there's no particular reason why she shouldn't be there. There's no suggestion that she has done a bad job. There's no suggestion that she was distracted. The baby is only 3 months. They are very portable at that age. She wasn't running around with a toddler playing with Lego on the floor and distracting everybody. She's done what she feels is the best to the best of her ability, which mothers are doing every single day. And for me, it's just about getting more women into politics, more women to feel welcomed by that world, which is incredibly old-fashioned. It's completely anachronistic. You know, they are. We watch the debates in the House of Commons, and there are more men that are behaving like babies, yelling at each other across the benches than that baby did. He was quieter than most of them. So
that I do agree with you on, absolutely. Suzanne Evans, though, I'm sorry, where does this end? I mean, OK, maybe a baby isn't that distracting at 3 months old, but they certainly are when they get older and start crawling. You'd be able to bring your toddler, your 4-year-old to work. I mean, come on. It's a full-time job, isn't it, being a mum or a dad, and you should just have to get childcare.
Yeah, I think that's right. The way I see it, Dan, is that Stella Creasy could only do this because she is actually a very privileged woman. She's a middle-class, professional, liberal woman who thinks she can get away with it because of the actual job she does, which, let's not forget, is incredibly highly paid. And let's be in no doubt, she can afford good childcare. Now, I think if she was working flipping burgers, if she was working on a factory floor, or if she was a bus conductor, she would not be able to take her baby to work. It simply would not be allowed. And neither would she be able to take her baby to work if she was working in a more, let's put it, highly pressured job. If she was a pilot,
for example,
or a theatre surgeon, or a nurse, absolutely. So my worry about this is here we have an already very privileged woman trying to claim more privileges, and I think actually making even more divisions in society, because most women who earn she does, and let's be honest, she makes almost 3 times the national average wage as a member of Parliament. Women who cannot do this are once again going to be put or are at a disadvantage, and they don't complain. They get on with their job, they work hard, they find childcare, and of course their partners get involved. And I'm sure Stella Creasy's partner is a wonderful dad, but where was he? Where was he?
Well, let me bring Christina Rianoff in. Christina, you can be the tie break here. Who do you agree with? Are you with Bev or are you with Suzanne?
I'm actually agree with both. That's true, because I can see both parts of the story. At work, at my place, I have a crash, and actually my instructors sometimes do leave children there because they're simply single moms. They don't have any help. And we provide that kind of service. It's there because we provide it for my members at Wellbeing Centers. So it's also there for instructors. I do not have an issue with that because I'm also working mom, and I understand that. Babies at 3 months, probably okay. Toddlers are not, because they are crazy. They go around, they pick on everything. It's going to be just a chaos there. But I agree that the childcare issue has to be raised because it's so expensive. The childcare is very expensive. For me, nowadays, I don't go anywhere simply because Ben and I will always work. And for us to pay someone, it's really hard. You have to find somebody with flexible hours. It's a lot of money. And we don't have much support and by other family members. So it's always a big question for us to go out or just stay home.
And I understand how difficult that sacrifice is. But Bev Turner, let's look at last night. You've got this spectator bash. Now, I know what the MPs are like at an awards do like that. They are downing the booze. They are acting quite inappropriately. Is it not just plain weird that Stella Creasy took a baby into an environment like that rather than saying, actually, I'm a mum, I'm going to make a sacrifice and miss this event, or I'm going to pay for a babysitter?
She's breastfeeding. She's breastfeeding. What can we say?
Help.
You know, she's breastfeeding, Dan. She can still be there as an MP and drink her water and not get drunk like all the other MPs are free to do. She is making a sacrifice by even being there. She is compromised already. by the fact that she's choosing to be there in a slightly different capacity. And I really hope everybody in the room wasn't judging her. You know, when the babies are that little, they don't need to be down in a cot. She would have had a pram that he I think it's a boy, that he or she could sleep in. You know, she's a hard, look at her, she's knackered. She's a hard-working mum. This is what mums do. That's why they need to be in more positions of power, because we're really blooming capable and we can do 6 different things at once and still do them well. So I applaud her for raising awareness of this issue.
Suzanne, this was just a big piss up. I mean, come on. This isn't going to work, is it? I mean, Suzanne, would you feel uncomfortable? Suzanne, would you feel uncomfortable if you ran an event like that on a table, there were loads of people getting drunk, and then someone brought their baby?
To be honest, Dad, in that particular situation, I'd rather it was a baby there than maybe a teenager or an older child, because babies, they won't know about people getting drunk and it will just all wash over them and it won't be an issue, really. So I don't think that's really the point. I think the point is, you know, when is it appropriate and when is it not appropriate to have childcare? And I'd say in that particular issue, whatever the age of the child, it's appropriate to have childcare. And to be honest, I'd like to say to Sir Creasy, absolutely, childcare is very, very difficult, but government policy actually, and successive, not just the Conservative government, but the previous Labour government policy too, have actually made it much more difficult for women to get affordable childcare, partly through the childcare voucher scheme, which subsidises childcare, which inevitably therefore makes it more expensive because it puts up the baseline cost of care. I think that's something that should be looked at. And also because of the excessive regulation. You're not allowed to place your child with an unregistered childminder or someone who isn't Ofsted registered. So that means you can't use those childcare vouchers to take advantage of paying family or friends, aunties, uncles, whoever, who might be best placed to
which does seem ridiculous, Christina, but I presume before you made the decision to start a family, you and Ben did have a conversation about the cost of childcare and the likely sacrifices that you would have to make and who was going to work. And obviously, to me, this isn't a male-female issue because, of course, blokes can take paternity leave now if they choose to.
Yeah, it is definitely a parent issue. And I think, but another thing we have to take in consideration is the mother's well-being, because to separate from the child when the child is only 3 months old is really hard. I remember when the first time I went to a wedding, friend's wedding with Ben, and Mila was only 3, I hated the whole night. I could not enjoy myself because I was on the phone checking with the childcare.
So Bev Turner, am I just being heartless here? Am I not understanding this because I'm not a parent? Is that what this is?
I think so, Dan. And I think what's happened over the years, I remember writing an essay about this at university 20 years ago, about the fact that feminism had failed mothers because the feminists of the day who fought so hard for economic parity, for reproductive health and rights over our fertility, none of them were mums. And so this part of the conversation, nobody was shouting, get dads to look after their kids. While we are out making money with the men, who is looking after the kids? And this has to be, should parents be able to take their babies to work? As soon as we can get rid of this being a female problem, we will make massive changes.
Yeah, and I would clarify as well, if it was a one-off, if someone was unable to do the babysitting, I would understand that. But I'm sorry, I would have serious question marks even after this discussion if someone was bringing their baby to work every day. Fascinating debate, though. That was television.
Well, I'm going to get you round to babysit. I'm going out tomorrow night. I'm a great babysitter, Bev. You can come here and babysit.
I'm a great babysitter as long as I'm not working.
You and can babysit for an hour.
No, I love it. I'm up for that. I'm up for that. Former political consultant and writer Suzanne Evans and professional former Strictly Come Dancing performer Christina Rianoff. So, who do you agree with? Should mums be able to take their babies to work? Andrew on Twitter says, it depends on what they do and the workplace. A lot of businesses are not geared up to be suitable for small children. That doesn't mean discrimination, but no doubt that's the next bandwagon for the left to jump on. Yeah, he's right. Marion says, if a mum wants to stay with their children, they need to go home. This is why we need more men doing important jobs, because too many women want to be with their families. They give women who don't want to be at home a bad name. And Yale adds, it's funny how this is just about mums, almost like men are admitting you don't have this problem because you don't look after your children. By all means, lads, show us how it's done by looking after your own kids for a change. Your verdict is in. And you're with me on this. Just 15% of you agree that mums should be able to take their babies to work, while 85% of you say it's inappropriate. You're sensible people. Coming up, he's gone from the man dubbed America's mayor to one of the most colourful figures in US politics. The man behind the headlines, Rudy Giuliani, answers the big questions on Trump, Biden, and more in a special Thanksgiving interview at 10:20. But next, is Boris a man in trouble, or was that bumbling speech just a one-off? Only one woman can tell. Body language expert Judy James will give her verdict straight after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Mark Dolan and Rudy Giuliani on the way. But first, we all have bad days in the office. I certainly do. But when poor old Boris Johnson muddled his way through a speech to the CBI on Monday, it prompted headlines of a Tory crisis of confidence. But should anyone really be worried? Was this just a humble mistake? Here to give her verdict on that big question. Is Boris okay? It's our body language expert, Judy James. So, Judy, let's have a look at what went on. Some people called it a toe-curling performance, and I'll get you to analyse off the back.
Forgive me. Forgive me. Peppa Pig World is very much my kind of place. It has very safe streets.
Judy, my heart goes out to him. I think this was just a mistake. But do you think this is something deeper?
Dan, yes, I do. There's two things that every good speaker should be in control of. One is their notes. And you have your own notes, you have your own numbers on your notes, you check them before you go on, that's up to you. And you can actually see when Boris is looking through his notes, there's no eye darts to one side. He's not blaming anybody else. He's not looking to anybody else for help. So he knows that's his fault. Number two, you should be in control of your message. Now, he was making some reasonably basic points. They were policy points about things that he's spoken about many times. And his default position, when, let's say, he dropped his notes, should be just they're in his mind. He could actually ad-lib them.
He's got a lot on his plate, though, Judy.
But his default should not be Peppa Pig. I mean, you can see him, Dan. He's talking about Peppa Pig. He's patently not even focusing on Peppa Pig.
The thing is, that's where he'd been the day before. So I think he just thought, and actually this is something that you're taught if you study public speaking. If you're in a moment like that, just talk about something familiar so that you can get back on track. But Judy, I also want you to take a look at this, because after the speech, a reporter had quite an awkward exchange with the PM.
In your speech to the CBI, you lost your notes, you lost your place, you went off on a tangent about Peppa Pig. Frankly, is everything okay?
I think that people got the vast majority of the points I wanted to make, and I thought it went over well.
Judy, he sort of backed away there. Was he annoyed that the reporter fronted him up about this, or was he embarrassed?
I think he was slightly shocked. You can see his lower eyes begin to rise, as though he's almost forgotten it himself. He extends his hand, and that's a sort of gesture of friendship. It's like an empty embrace. It's sort of, no, look, be nice to me, be kind to me. And he uses a lidded gesture as well. So he's trying to charm his way out of it. But then you can see the eye dart, and yes, they're denial gestures. He kind of furtively walks away. And it worries me slightly, because I think it would almost be better to see a moment of honesty and just say, I lost my place in my notes. It was a lousy speech, but to try and bluff your way out of it. And what annoys me as well, Dan, when Theresa May had her infamous speech, that was an act of God. That could have happened to anybody. She lost her voice. That wasn't her fault. And yet she got pilloried for it non-stop. Even now it's played. With Boris, that was an act of sloppiness, not an act of God.
Although Theresa May, she was at... she was facing a political funeral at that point, you might say, Judy. Look, I want to move on to the big royal story of the week. It was this documentary on the BBC, The Princes and the Press. And this odd little bloke, I don't know if you know him, Judy, this weird, snivelling little man, Omid Scobie, who is the cheerleader for Meghan Markle. He calls himself a journalist. He's actually like a paid PR. But anyway, he went on this documentary and made claims about the royal family. He's told lots of porcupines in the past about his relationship with Meghan and whether she cooperated with his book, Finding Freedom. So I want you to look at this, Judy, and tell me if you think Scobie is telling the truth.
It's been rumour for quite some time that a lot of the most damaging and negative stories about Harry and Meghan that have ended up in the pages of the press have come from other royal households or from other royal aides or courtiers. And from my own reporting and research, that is exactly true.
Judy, I mean, he doesn't always tell the truth. Was this weird bloke Scobie telling the truth to Amal Rajan there?
Okay, he's quite the smoothie. I would say his body language was unconvincing for several reasons. But Dan, I sat there yelling at the screen. They gave him such an easy ride because did you notice when he got to the moment where he was about to make his killer statement, they took the camera off. I was screaming at the set. If you're going to get somebody to make a statement like that, hold the camera on their face as they make that statement so that the viewers can, even just from a gut reaction, see whether they think that he's using what are called beach ball hands, and that suggests creative thinking rather than precise thinking.
He does a lot of that. He does a lot of that.
He's really enjoying himself as well. You can see micro smiles at the corner of his mouth. And the end that we see, he actually presents his killer point as a gift. But honestly, I could have written a letter to the producer. Why did you not let us see his face when he makes his actual statement? It was so annoying.
Very suspicious, Judy. Well, I don't believe a word the bloke says, and I think you've just backed that up. Judy James, our body language queen. Judy will speak again very soon. But coming up, is Joe Biden's presidency finished? Is Donald Trump only just getting started? Rudy Giuliani, the man who's been at the heart of US politics for 30 years, takes time out from his Thanksgiving celebrations for an exclusive interview with me at 10:20. But next, are those having a crisis of confidence in Boris Johnson overreacting? GBNews star Mark Dolan argues why we shouldn't give up on the PM yet. That's straight after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Earlier today, the Met Office named Storm Arwen. We're particularly concerned about the strength of the wind, especially later tomorrow and into Saturday morning. There will also be some snow in places from this storm system. It's coming in from the north, so it's bringing in colder air, but it's really the winds really picking up later on Friday. Those isobars really squeezing together initially across Scotland, but increasingly further south. Some very strong winds during Friday night. Back to tonight, and the winds are picking up and bringing some rain across much of the UK. But ahead of that rain, clear skies will allow a fairly extensive frost across East Anglia and the south east. Temperatures may actually start to rise a little by dawn as the cloud spills in. It's going to be a cold day on Friday and a fairly grey morning with outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales. Brighter skies follow, but so do the strong winds and increasingly snow showers over northern Scotland. In fact, that snow turning more and more persistent over northern Scotland, mostly over hills, but even at low levels there could be some, and routes like the A9 will be particularly treacherous with those strong winds making for blizzards. There'll be a bit of brightness in the afternoon, but it's not going to feel warm. Those winds are the biggest cause for concern widely across northern and western areas. Later on Friday, gusts of 50 to maybe 65 miles an hour, and an amber Met Office warning in place for the northeast, where gusts of 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little more in some places during Friday evening and into Saturday morning. There is a warning for the snow as well. Those kind of winds could cause some structural damage, certainly make for some disruption on the roads, potentially cause some power issues also. There will be this zone of wet weather then sinking south on Friday night. That will still have some snow mixed in, mostly hills, but there could be a little bit at lower levels, so that's an extra hazard. Details of that snow on Saturday still uncertain. It does look as if there won't be much at low levels, and if there is, it'll melt fairly quickly. But still a cold wind blowing on Saturday. The weather warnings are all on the Met Office website. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's coming up this Thanksgiving Thursday. But first, my superstar panel are back with me. Let me introduce them again. It is the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's scheming First Minister, last night, quite tragically in my opinion, dismissed any speculation about her leaving frontline politics. In an interview with the BBC, Sturgeon said that any rumours of her ending her current term early were wishful thinking.
Let me just answer this question straight, because it's actually quite interesting, and I almost take the wishful thinking of my opponents on this as some kind of, I'm sure, unintended compliment, but compliment nevertheless. It's almost as if my opponents have concluded they can't beat me or remove me from office themselves, so they're kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that I'll remove myself from office. But they're going to be really disappointed because I'm going to be round a lot longer. And given how many Tory and Labour leaders have come and gone in my time as First Minister, perhaps a lot longer than them and a lot longer than they might wish me to be. I was elected.
The cocky First Minister also snapped after Laura Kuenssberg pointed out polling figures that suggest support for Scottish independence is fading.
Isn't the truth of it, you're a bit stuck? I mean, the country is pretty stubbornly divided, pretty much 50-50 on this. Polling suggests the enthusiasm for independence has actually faded.
No, it doesn't.
It has fallen back. The average over the last 6 months is a 3% gap. It's always roughly 50-50.
Occasionally, the polls are slightly above 50%. Occasionally now they're slightly below 50%. But
do you ever worry that you've missed the moment?
No. No.
Oh, Nicola Sturgeon doesn't like it when someone presents her with a fact that doesn't back up her little world where she is the Queen of Scots, does she? Political scientist Professor Sir John Curtis told The Times that Sturgeon was at risk of looking like a politician stuck in second gear. And this might explain why a YouGov poll for The Times revealed that Sturgeon's approval ratings have plunged since the height of the pandemic, dropping almost 40 points since August last year when it was 50 plus. So, has scheming Sturgeon become too arrogant to successfully lead Scotland, Sean Bailey?
Look, politics has a tendency to form bubbles, and I think she's been living in a bubble of independence for such a long time, she's forgotten that people can move on. And I think what the pandemic has shown is that Scotland wants leadership, and she wasn't the best at that time, and they're beginning to look around at other things. And once you get past that one-track pony that she is, you then start to say, well, how has she run our country? And I think Scottish people now will be asking her much tougher questions than they have in the past, which makes her vulnerable. And the idea that she can't be beaten, that only exists in her mind.
Sam Dowler, Sturgeon doesn't seem to like dealing with facts in interviews, does she? Unless you're actually saying, Sturgeon, you are queen, we believe in you, you're going to lead us to this great independent fantasy. She doesn't like it because I wouldn't say Kuenssberg was being tough on her. She was just presenting some facts.
I think ultimately the pandemic was something of a gift for Nicola Sturgeon. She loves the sound of her own voice.
Absolutely.
She loves to be. She loved to, but she didn't need to be on television every single day to discuss, this and that about the pandemic.
Yeah, she loved her big BBC press conference.
But she did. But at the same time, I do think we run the risk of being slightly misogynistic, I suppose, about somebody, a woman in power that has,
What's misogyny got?
in the last election.
Sorry, did you see interviewers with Theresa May, mate?
Yes, yeah, of course. But in the last election in May, she obviously got, the majority of the vote. So she's absolutely correct.
She didn't get a majority. She needed the Greens to prop her up.
In saying that she is going to be in power until 2026, she's absolutely correct in that. And I do think that, I don't at all agree with Scottish independence. I think it's a fallacy. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
What's misogyny got to do with that?
Well, because people don't like somebody who's too, especially a woman who's too big for their boots. Do you know what I mean? I think there's an air of that about Nicola.
Why, Dominique, do we always have? Why do the left and Sam, I love you, but why do woke-topians like Sam have to bring every argument back to identity politics? I feel like Sam had no way of defending that ridiculous performance from Sturgeon, so he immediately says it's misogynistic. The interviewer was a woman, the female political editor of the BBC.
I'm not talking about that particular interview. I'm talking about in general. when people say, "Oh, we want to see her demise," blah 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 blah.
No,
you know, because
I want to see her demise because I think she's trying to destroy Scotland.
You think she's got too much power, and she's like, "Oh, I'm the Billy Big Boots here."
Look at how Theresa May was treated. Theresa May was given a much tougher time than Nicola Sturgeon has ever had.
Yeah, and that's misogyny. That's misogyny.
I mean, it's not misogyny.
She was a terrible Prime Minister,
No, she wasn't.
who failed to deliver
No,
Brexit.
she didn't. Now we've got the rubbish version that Boris gave us, which clearly isn't working.
I think in regards to Scotland,
yes,
talk
to me about.
Let's get back to Scotland. I mean, in regards to Scotland, I think Sturgeon uses the whole independence thing as sort of a way to deflect from her other failures, namely. In education, if you're a poor kid in Scotland, you're less likely to go to university than a poor kid in England, and that's actually a historical first. She has record levels of waiting times for A&E. They're really, really bad at the moment. There is a healthcare crisis in Scotland as well as an education one, and people want her to talk about that. Yet she seems
record levels of drug death.
Yeah, drug death and crime, and she seems so focused on independence. And
it's not going to happen.
And when Laura Kuenssberg actually tried to press her on when exactly that would be, she got aggressive because it's a way for her to deflect.
And
from
basically,
other
Sturgeon
failures.
gets aggressive when she doesn't have an answer to the question.
Exactly.
And I
because
think
the answer to the question has always been independence. And what you'll find is she's damaging her drive for independence by being a very, very poor leader. At the end of the day, Scottish people are very shrewd, and what they want is their country run properly, and there's a big argument that she isn't doing that. And that is what will remove her in the
Is it going to be ran better from Westminster?
If you really believe in it that much,
I think
just do it.
I think what Sturgeon knows is if she doesn't have the carrot of independence dangled over her people, sort of the relevance of her declines because people I think vote for
that's her MO.
The SNP in order to
hiding
hold
behind a global pandemic just doesn't cut it anymore.
No.
There's absolutely no reason, Sturgeon, if you genuinely believe you can get a Scottish independence vote, to keep hiding behind COVID. The point is, she knows she can't get the vote anyway, and she also knows, and this is the most important point, she would lose the vote.
Yeah.
But let's move on now. A YouTube star called Mr. Beast has created, and this terrifies me, a real-life version of that horrible Netflix series, Squid Game, with 456 random players competing for £342,000. Now, for those of you who haven't heard about this whole Squid Game phenomenon, it's a hit South Korean series that explores a dystopian reality in which a mysterious organisation recruits people in debt to compete in a series of games for the chance to win a life-changing amount of money. But here's the twist. Unlike the show, Mr. Beast's version obviously doesn't see any of its players killed, but it does include, and if you've seen it, and it's the most watched Netflix series ever, so I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, it does include that terrifying tug-of-war and glass-hopping game, which freaked me out well and truly. Have a look at this new Squid Game.
The first game we're going to play is red light, green light, and they have 30 minutes to cross the red line on the other side of the huge room.
So without further ado, green light. Red light.
Oh!
I'm doing this for the girls.
Team 5 right now! Team 6 is balling! And you're done! No, he's right at the end! Dig! Oh! They're Congratulations, Team 5! You have all...
Oh my goodness, it makes me shudder. And obviously in the
Why does it make you
real
shudder?
Netflix, because Dominic, in the real Netflix, they were killed.
Oh,
They
I
were
think
killed.
you guys are just being old and boring, if I'm being honest, because I'd actually love to do that.
Well, I am old and boring. Sean is old, but he's not boring.
It isn't something fun like, the Crystal Maze, for example. This is...
fun!
No, Sean, have you watched the Squid Game?
Let's be clear. Let's not underestimate the power of this. You're talking about an individual in Mr. Beast who has over 100 million followers across all the platforms. And our children watch this every day. And the idea that you build this big thing on the back of a game that talks about exploiting people who are struggling for money.
It's not real.
Absolutely hate it.
This was a glorified advert.
It might not be real.
I am with you on this.
I'm not with you too.
This was
I the game, so let me sign up.
Thank you. This was a glorified advert for an app, like a game that you can play on your phone, and obviously they talked about it.
They talked about it. And the three of you, because in the next hour they're going to be revealing their greatest Britain and Union Jack has to. Now, still to come this hour, on the day of Thanksgiving, America's mayor and one of the most polarising figures in US politics, Rudy Giuliani, will reveal all about the last days of the Trump administration, the Donald's mooted return to the White House, and whether Biden can hold on for a full term. That is in an exclusive interview in just a few minutes. In Uncancelled, is it fair to blame ordinary Brits for the Channel tragedy? Dr. Rakib Hassan will be talking to me on the alarming rhetoric emerging from the left. Are those having a crisis of confidence in Boris Johnson? Overreacting. GB News star Mark Dolan argues why we shouldn't give up on the PM just yet. And have we reached peak COVID madness now that we're demonising mere mask slips? We'll debate that and more. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in the media buzz. And, as I just mentioned, crown today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, the news headlines at 10 with Karen Robbins.
Thank you, Dan. These are your latest headlines. A travel ban is to be imposed on 6 African nations over a new COVID-19 variant, which officials say is the worst one we've seen so far. From midday tomorrow, flights from South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, Botswana, Eswatini and Zimbabwe will be suspended, and all 6 countries will be added to the red list. Health Secretary Sajid Javid announced that UK travellers will be required to quarantine. No cases of the variant have as yet been found in Britain. The Prime Minister has written to French President Emmanuel Macron setting out a 5-point plan to prevent channel crossings. The measures include joint maritime patrols in each other's territorial waters and better real-time intelligence sharing. Boris Johnson also wants work to begin immediately on an agreement to see those who do reach the UK swiftly return to France. He hopes the measures will reduce the incentive for people to put their lives in the hands of traffickers and prevent further tragedies. GB News understands that a body found on a beach near Calais today is not thought to be linked to yesterday's small boat sinking, which left 27 people dead. The identity of the victim is unknown, but they are believed to have attempted to cross the channel. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is scheduled to meet French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin over the weekend.
I have Madam Deputy Speaker, just spoken again with my French counterpart, Minister Darmanin, and I've once again reached out and made my offer very clear to France in terms of joint France and UK cooperation, joint patrols to prevent these dangerous journeys from taking place. I've offered to work with France to put more officers on the ground and do absolutely whatever is necessary to secure the area so that vulnerable people do not risk their lives by getting into unseaworthy boats.
A gas leak in a Siberian coal mine has resulted in the deaths of at least 52 people, including 6 members of the rescue team. The methane gas explosion at the Lisvyazhnaya mine took place around 250 metres underground. 239 people have been rescued. It was the deadliest mine accident in the country since 2010, when 91 people were killed. Tube passengers face widespread disruption from tomorrow due to a series of strikes being launched by London Underground drivers. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union will walk out in a dispute over claims that new night tube rotas will affect their work-life balance. A 24-hour strike on tube lines, Central, Jubilee, Northern, Piccadilly and Victoria will start at 4:30 a.m. on Friday, with further action planned in the coming weeks. You are right up to date now. Back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Rudy Giuliani is on the way this Thanksgiving Thursday. But first, Mark Dolan is tonight's outsider. And quite incredibly, when you think back to his landslide victory in 2019, having faith in Boris Johnson, if you're a member of the political and media elite, is becoming something of an outsider opinion. Despite a slew of headlines he'd rather forget, surely it's premature to give up on the Prime Minister who delivered us Brexit against all odds, Mark Dolan.
Absolutely. We've learnt one thing about Boris in the last few years. Underestimate him at your peril, Dan. This is a guy that succeeded in London, which is a Labour-dominated city, twice as London mayor. Tories just don't win in London. He did the double. You obviously have his instrumental role in Brexit. The fact that he decided to support Brexit meant that I think, that was the tipping point in which many voters took the idea of leaving the European Union seriously. After that, he wins the election, the landslide, as you mentioned, against the odds. And then, of course, he got Brexit done. There was the furlough scheme, which has been a world-class solution for those being forced to stay at home in the course of the pandemic. Now, you and I would argue that it oughtn't to have been necessary because healthy people should have been able to go to work and continue life as usual and protect the vulnerable. But if, Dan, you're going to lock people up, you need something like the furlough scheme. It absolutely worked. And now he's nailing it with the pandemic, because ultimately England is an outlier within the United Kingdom. And you and I, we love our viewers, GB News, we love this United Kingdom. But unfortunately, a lot of shame has fallen upon the leadership in Scotland and Wales in particular. They've pursued awful ideas like vaccine passports, which create the idea of sort of certain public services and rights being predicated on your medical status, which has damaged hospitality and divided society. England haven't done that because, of course, the Prime Minister has jurisdiction in England. And now England is basically Sweden Mark II. Even the Germans today, I was reading in Die Welt, which is a national newspaper in Germany, that they're envious of how England are doing. And they're speculating, Dan, that it was Freedom Day. That on the 19th of July, when the Prime Minister stood his ground, which the leader of the opposition said was reckless, many sage scientists as well, and of course most of the media, well, he did it. So look, Boris is not perfect. There's a perception that Carrie, his wife, is running the country. He's pursuing an unaffordable, scientifically unproven green agenda, with other countries like India and China not pulling their weight. There's the migrant crisis, which you've brilliantly pointed out this week on your show, is a total emergency, and now a human tragedy, a cost of living crisis. But I've got faith in this guy because he's done it before and he'll do it again.
Look, Mark, I genuinely hope you're right. And I feel like I need to clear that up, actually, because very often people say you're being too harsh on Boris Johnson. And actually, I was a Boris Johnson supporter. I backed him becoming Tory party leader when very, very few people in the media did. I backed him to win the election because I knew he was the only person who was going to be able to deliver Brexit, and he succeeded on that front. But Mark, I am a bit worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm not worried about his mental capacity or anything like that. It's nothing to do with the fact that he's lost his place in a speech. No. It's about whether he can actually deliver controversial policies that are important to the future of this nation. And Mark, you just mentioned it. I've written a new column about this for the Mail Online tonight. I really worry that if he does not stop the boats, Mark, which is something that his government promised to do 2 years ago, this is now a national emergency in my opinion, that could put his job under threat.
Well, that's right. And I think he has the powers of persuasion. I think he's got the intellect. I think he's got the ability to knock heads together, which he did in the course of the Brexit negotiations. He was very brave during Brexit. He threw the DUP under the bus because the reality was that by accepting, which of course we all hate, that Northern Ireland protocol, that's what got a deal across the line. We're paying the price now, but I think that Boris Johnson calculated that he would sort of take a bath on that invisible border and solve it further down the line, which I believe is what will happen. So he was playing the long game on that one. And he knows that he will not get re-elected if he doesn't solve this migrant crisis. So he will have to just look at the Home Office, and the support he's got is Priti Patel, the right person to be the Home Secretary. And what I'd like the Prime Minister to be more ruthless. This is a guy that couldn't sack Dominic Cummings. Yeah. Even though he made that ill-fated sight test visit to Barnard Castle.
The problem is, though, it's more fundamental, I believe, than Priti Patel. And I know, and quite rightly, she's going to be criticised, and I've criticised her again tonight. But this is about, as Dominic Cummings put it, the blob, the civil service blob, the Home Office blob. They are the public servants in this country who are fundamentally against Boris's agenda, who don't want to implement policies like offshore processing. And actually, it's going to take some real willpower, some real force of Boris to stand up to the blob. Just like, Mark, I would say, what's happened to clipping the wings of the BBC and standing up to the BBC? So, yes, I want Boris to succeed, but he made a lot of promises to us before that 2019 election, Mark. Yes, on Brexit, he has well and truly delivered. There's a few bumps in the road. There were always going to be, but he will forever be remembered as the man who helped secure the referendum result and then delivered it. And that is his legacy. But, Mark, we need more from him.
We do, and he is everyone's Prime Minister. The problem with the media is that they characterise Boris Johnson in a certain way as a lazy, bumbling fool. And I spoke to Tom Bower, his biographer, on my programme, and Tom Bower said that he's one of the cleverest politicians in the country. He's extremely shrewd. He's a master tactician, but he has a weak spot, an Achilles heel. He wants to be liked. So he's got to learn in office. It's still his first term. He's been knocked sideways, not just by almost dying from COVID, but dealing with the pandemic. Who would be Prime Minister over the last 2 years? And frankly, is there a country really in the world outside of perhaps Sweden that's had a good pandemic? I don't think so. So yes, the bottom line is he's got it all to do and he's got a lot to prove, but he needs to succeed. And I think we've got to back him.
Yeah, I do back him. And I fundamentally want him to succeed because that's good for the country. I would also say, Mark, when he's not quite up to scratch or when he's giving in to the blob or he's giving into the mainstream media or giving into the BBC, we have to call him out.
Well, we do, and this is a Prime Minister. You're right, this is a Prime Minister that is not willing to go on record and say that only women have a cervix.
Yeah, exactly, and we have to call that out. We have to call that out.
That makes him Keir Starmer Mark II.
I like your defence of Boris Johnson, though, Mark, because it's important. This is a man who's done a lot of good things, and no one's ever going to defend him on the BBC or ITV or Sky News.
Look,
so thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
And Mark, you will obviously be here 9 p.m. Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the brilliant, entertaining, informative. Oh my goodness, it's just the greatest show. I love it. Mark Dolan tonight. Is that enough of a sell?
I love it. Thank you,
Mark. I'll see you tomorrow night at 10. Coming up, Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor and one of the most polarising figures in US politics, will reveal all about the last days of the Trump administration and whether or not the Donald will make another run for the White House. Plus, he'll give his take on Biden, Afghanistan and more in an exclusive interview next. And have we reached peak COVID madness now that we're demonising mere mask slips? We'll take a look at Boris's night out at the theatre and bring you tomorrow's front pages in the Media Buzz.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Earlier today, the Met Office named Storm Arwen. We're particularly concerned about the strength of the wind, especially later tomorrow and into Saturday morning. There will also be some snow in places from this storm system. It's coming in from the north, so it's bringing in colder air, but it's really the winds really picking up later on Friday. Those isobars really squeezing together initially across Scotland, but increasingly further south. Some very strong winds during Friday night. Back to tonight, and the winds are picking up and bringing some rain across much of the UK. But ahead of that rain, clear skies will allow a fairly extensive frost across East Anglia and the southeast. Temperatures may actually start to rise a little by dawn as the cloud spills in. It's going to be a cold day on Friday and a fairly grey morning with outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales. Brighter skies follow, but so do the strong winds and increasingly snow showers over northern Scotland. In fact, that snow turning more and more persistent over northern Scotland, mostly over hills, but even at low levels there could be some, and routes like the A9 will be particularly treacherous with those strong winds making for blizzards. There'll be a bit of brightness in the afternoon, but it's not going to feel warm. Those winds are the biggest cause for concern widely across northern and western areas. Later on Friday, gusts of 50 to maybe 65 miles an hour, and an amber Met Office warning in place for the northeast, where gusts of 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little more in some places during Friday evening and into Saturday morning. There is a warning for the snow as well. Those kind of winds could cause some structural damage, certainly make for some disruption on the roads, potentially cause some power issues also. There will be this zone of wet weather then sinking south on Friday night. That will still have some snow mixed in, mostly hills, but there could be a little bit at lower levels, so that's an extra hazard. Details of that snow on Saturday still uncertain. It does look as if there won't be much at low levels, and if there is, it'll melt fairly quickly. But still a cold wind blowing on Saturday. The weather warnings are all on the Met Office website. Bye for now.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
And we're back. He went from being America's mayor after 9/11 to one of the most significant players in the Trump administration and one of the most polarising. US political firebrand Rudy Giuliani joins me now to celebrate Thanksgiving. And Rudy, as you can imagine, got a lot to ask you about Trump and Biden and lots more. But first off, of course, you received that moniker of America's mayor for helping the nation rally after 9/11. And your actions that day certainly was something that heartened me, even on the other side of the world. And now, thanks to the Biden administration in part, we've seen the Taliban return to power in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Do you feel that country is inevitably going to become a hotbed of terrorist activity again that could put the US and the UK at threat?
Yeah, I think there's no question of that. I think Biden's decision-making with regard to Afghanistan is probably one of the worst decisions ever made by an American president, and probably one of the most dishonorable. It's not so much that we pulled out. There was a way to do it. It had to be done gradually and with the kinds of conditions that Trump imposed on it. He did it gradually. He was getting there. And but Trump would listen to the generals when they said, "Oh, no. If you pull out too quickly, we're not going to be able to stabilize on time." Biden got it into his head that he had to have him out by September 11th. He wanted it was a political decision, not a national security decision, not a military decision. He wanted to be able to announce on September 11th, America's longest war is over. So he stupidly decides that in April, which now gives the Taliban and all of the terrorist groups there a wonderful window of all that time, knowing that we're going to leave to start capturing cities, which they did. And then when it became obvious that we weren't going to be able to hold that place, and his generals were telling that, here's the part that's almost impossible to describe. He took out the troops before he took out the civilians, which is exactly the opposite way that you would have evacuated. And that resulted in carnage.
It was a complete disaster, and carnage is the word for it. Carnage is the word for it. And look, you have been very critical of Biden, let's be completely honest. You say that his mental capacity is not up to being US president. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, first of all, 56% of the American people now agree with that. So it isn't just me saying that. It is true. I said it over a year and a half ago on a podcast that I did with 2 American doctors. I didn't just say it. I went and had them examine him based on tapes of his going back 20 years. So they did comparisons of the way he spoke 5 years ago and the way he spoke today, of the pauses in his speech pattern, of the things that he forgets. And then they took out the DSM-5, which is the Bible of psychiatrists for defining mental illness. And they showed that he met, what was it, 8 or 7 of the 8 symptoms of at least moderate dementia, if not more advanced dementia. And since then, a year ago, he's gotten much worse. So I didn't just make that up. I mean, I had it sourced by doctors. There were at least another dozen doctors who said the same thing. They were just afraid to come on television.
He's fine, but it's weird, isn't it, when you see him unable to read an auto cue, unable to enter the right entrance of the White House. I mean, I'm concerned that this is the guy with the nuclear codes. It's genuinely quite terrifying.
Well, I mean, I've known him for 35 years personally. So it's not as if I don't know him. I met him probably longer than that. 1981, I worked with him on the crime bill very closely in 1994, when Republicans and Democrats used to work together. In fact, I probably authored that bill way back in the Reagan administration. And he was never the smartest guy. I mean, the joke always was he was the dumbest guy in the Senate. So, of course, you never know who really is the dumbest guy, but he got that label. So there's a little bit more difficulty in recognizing it because he's always said dumb things.
He's a nice man,
he's always had a
isn't he? He's a nice man.
Well, people think he's a nice man.
Is
now,
he?
if you watch him getting angry at the press, and you watch him turning his back and walking out, even in one case when he was campaigning, wanted to have a fist fight with someone.
Yeah.
You realize that's another symptom of dementia.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think he is a nice man, but it's this diminished mental capacity.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite sad to watch.
One of the symptoms.
Now, look, I want to talk about your role in the bid to expose Hunter Biden before the election.
Correct.
Of course, the mainstream media didn't want that to happen. The social media giants didn't want it to happen.
I knew it from day one.
And now you're even under investigation, aren't you, as a
totally
result
unfairly
of
2.5 years.
of your role? So
In
is
fact-
this
in
an
fact, the
establishment attempt to discredit you, or did you do something wrong in your bid to expose Hunter Biden?
All I have to tell you is that they went and illegally got my iCloud account. And you know the first day they got it? The day I began representing Donald Trump. They have no interest in anything I did before that. I could have been the worst guy in the world before that. No problem. So they've been monitoring me now for 2.5 years, and they can't seem to find anything. So this is an investigation in search of a crime. And the frustrating part for them is I was a prosecutor for most of my life. I don't violate the law. I don't do it for moral reasons, and I don't do it because I'm not stupid. I'm not a stupid person. I'm pretty careful to pretty much make documents and records of what I do, and everything that they bring up, there are documents and records to prove, and all the things they're looking at are picayune. Did I register as a foreign agent? Well, I didn't have to because I was a criminal defense lawyer for someone, and I have an opinion from a lawyer saying that. That's the kind of thing we go through for 2.5 years. And meanwhile, we have Hunter Biden, who took millions of dollars from China, giving half of it to his father, admitting it on the hard drive, and they don't investigate. He says on the hard drive that over 30 years, he gave 50% of what he got to the senator and the vice president. As a former prosecutor, that's what you call a bribe.
Do you still represent Donald Trump now, Rudy? And what is your relationship like now?
I'm still his friend. I have been his friend for 32 years. I don't currently represent him because right now I'm representing myself and defending myself against these ridiculous charges. But I do continue to investigate the case. I have a podcast, rudyscommonsense.com. You can get it in all over the world. And I put out on that podcast all the things that the censored media prevents. For example, there was just a big disclosure in the United States of another deal of Hunter Biden's that got into like almost $1 billion with a Chinese company that makes vital material that could even be used for military purposes. It was disclosed in the New York Post and several other newspapers, not covered in any of the major newspapers. So my podcast will, broadcast.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's loads of ways people can get information now, aren't there? The Dominion voting systems, they were also coming for you in a reported $1 billion defamation suit. Where does that stand now? Because there's been different reporting on this.
It really has gone nowhere yet. There hasn't even been.
Are you nervous? Are you worried?
Discovery. No, I'm not nervous at all. Everything that I said about the election is not me. It's supported by affidavits and statements from other people. I just recently had occasion to count them in order to send them into the Bar Association, and they're well over 350. Statements under oath, most of them, from people in various states, 5 different states, all explaining having seen either small incidents or very large incidents of voter fraud, like stuffing the ballot box with ballots they wouldn't let anybody see, or actually connecting ballot boxes to the internet, or throwing people out of the room and counting ballots, not knowing there was a surveillance camera that recorded the whole thing. That's the kind of evidence that I have. So I'm very comfortable that we'll be able to prove it. What we got caught up in is the same hysteria that surrounded the hard drive. The media here will not allow you to say anything. Like if I were to go on television in America and explain his impaired condition, they'd probably censor it. Now, the strange thing is, 56% of the American people think he's impaired.
Yeah, there's
so
a big
getting the information.
And believe
kind of
me,
interesting to me.
Believe me, the media was more than happy to talk about what they considered Donald Trump's impaired state in the run-up to the last election. But look, Judy, I need to ask you about 3 big viral stories that got the world talking so that you can clear up what was really going on, okay? First, Sacha Baron Cohen. Now, he's obviously a very famous British comedian, and you were a big feature of his sequel to Borat.
They completely edited it.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, he implied that you had acted inappropriately in some way.
I did not at all act inappropriately. He did. In fact, he ran away. During that, when I became aware of what he was doing and the document, I called the police, and he ran down the street in his robe, and he ran away. Okay. I'm so sorry for that. It was a completely doctored film. I had no idea that what they were doing, and they actually doctored the film even after they shot it. And I called the police on him. He didn't call the police on me.
So why not
ran
sue?
Away.
Why not sue?
Because I'm a public figure, and to sue in the United States as a public figure, it's almost impossible to win. You have to prove deliberate lying. If he can say in any way that he made a mistake, it would be impossible. That's why Donald Trump doesn't sue. That's why, and that's why those people that are suing us are going to lose their case. Yeah, they're really doing it.
It's not worth it.
Not so much to win a case.
I agree with that. And the great thing about America is you can say what you think, and people can believe you and watch the film and judge for themselves. Now, the second one, Rudy, this image went all around the world. People were saying, "Is your face melting during this press conference?" Do you remember this? The makeup or what was happening? Was it hair dye? I feel for you because it looked very hot.
It was. I'm not used to wearing makeup, and it was very warm, and see, there you go. It was very, and I think I began sweating, and that was also at a time that I was kind of sick, I think. It was around the time I was getting sick.
Didn't you?
I don't remember exactly, but it was, I mean, I didn't know it was happening when it was happening.
Yeah. No, I feel for you. I feel for you
if I recall correctly.
Yeah, no, of course.
That was during a COVID scare.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and you got through that fine, which is great. Finally,
I actually had a very bad case of it.
Yeah, you ended up in hospital, right?
With the help of the president.
Oh, really? What did he recommend?
Well, I got it a couple of days after him. It was really amazing. He just got over it. I had it, went to the hospital, and Regeneron was still an experimental drug at the time. He was like the third person who took it, and I was probably the 10th. I was sort of on a list where they were going to experiment with it. Well, it turned out to be a tremendous medicine, and I had double pneumonia, and I was cured in about 4 days.
Wow!
And afterwards, I also got steroids. Afterwards, I felt 10 years younger for a while.
Gosh, that's certainly how you want to get through COVID. And then secondly, Rudy, I've got to ask you about our royal family after this moment went viral.
She said, you did a wonderful job on September 11, and therefore I'm making you an honorary knight, commander of the Royal something or other. I turned down.
Rudy, some people got very angry about that. They got very angry about that.
I don't know why. I adore the Queen. I have a great respect for the Queen. I really am truly one of her admirers, not just because I'm an honorary knight, but I've always admired her. I think she's an enormously strong woman. I love Great Britain. It's one of my favorite places to go is London. I once debated Boris Johnson on what's a better city, New York or London, about 6 years ago when he was mayor, 7 years ago. So it was a joke, but you're not allowed to tell jokes anymore.
No, you're not.
I was trying to be funny.
You're not when the woke mob are around. And you mentioned Prince Andrew in that speech as well. Do you know him at all, Rudy? Because, of course, he spent a lot of time in New York. What's he like?
I know him because he is the one who came to my office during that September 11 period and told me that the Queen wanted to honor me and Bernie Kerik and Tom Von Essen. And I was quite honored and really impressed. And then, of course, he was there at not only the ceremony, but the party that we had after. So I got to know him during that period of time. And, my relationship with him, he's a very nice guy. The rest of the stuff, I can't tell you. Who knows with all the stuff that's going on, what it is, I don't like to express opinions on things I don't know about. All I can tell you, my experience with him was he's like a regular guy.
And finally, Rudy, it is the question we all want to know. Has Donald Trump told you if he is going to run again? Because if you look at the polls in all of the swing states, he's well ahead of President Biden in a fantasy matchup.
Well, he hasn't told himself that yet. I mean, so I'll tell you exactly what his state of mind is. I think it's pretty. I think he's a very open guy, so I think it's pretty accurate what he's saying. Maybe I can help you this way. If the election were held right now, today, I have no doubt he'd run. I don't know if he would say that. I'm telling you that. I would say that, assuming that he feels up to it, and right now he's in tremendous health, assuming that the family is all okay with it, I would say the odds are that he will do it. But it's not 100%. It is 2 years from now. Who knows what's going to happen, either to him, his family, the other candidates. There's some of the other people in the race he admires tremendously. So if he couldn't run, or wasn't able, I don't think he'd feel. I think he'd feel we would still win. But I think we all believe we would have the best chance of winning with him. Also, it's a strange thing. I had this happen to me. I lost my first race for mayor. Person who succeeded me was a disaster. The city went up to the highest crime rates ever, 2 riots, all kinds of civil disorder. It almost elected me. It was like people go back and say, gee, maybe I made a mistake. Yeah. And you almost get drafted into doing it because you were the alternative to the guy who really screwed up. I think that's what's going on right now. I mean, he's beating him by 12, 15% now.
Exactly.
In places
a lot of people are regretting their vote. Well, look, Rudy Giuliani, absolutely fascinating insight. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining us.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and Merry Christmas, which I know is coming up. Beautiful time in London. Maybe I can get there. Oh, I'd love it.
I'd love to see you soon, Rudy. Thank you so much. Now, coming up, what does it say about the left that their first instinct after the migrant tragedy is to stir up anti-British sentiment? Dr. Rakib Hassan will be here and uncancelled. The next in the media buzz after Boris's later gotcha moment. Should we be demonising people for a little mask slip? Plus, we'll have more of those front pages too.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. And the first front pages have just been delivered on the front of the Metro. We just want to live like you. That's a quote from a 23-year-old Iraqi interviewed by the publication as migrants on the French coast vow to make the perilous journey across the Channel despite yesterday's tragedy. The Independent reports Boris Johnson has turned his back on pleas to provide safe routes for refugees to reach the UK from continental Europe. The Daily Telegraph leads with the anguish of a husband who believes his wife drowned in the English Channel migrant disaster. The husband claims his wife's GPS signal suddenly disappeared. Oh, my goodness, while he was tracking her across the sea. The Guardian follows news that broke tonight that South Africa and 5 more African countries have been added to the red list. Here we go again, as apparently a new COVID variant poses a significant threat. Do we believe it? I'm not so sure. That story also on the front of the Times. Their headline, variant halts travel to Africa because ministers and scientists have become deeply concerned about the new Botswana variant. We can't call it that, though, of course, because we'll be accused of racism. The Daily Mirror has an exclusive on DIY death boats as 4 flimsy vessels were found in Kent today. Plus, the daytime TV star Richard Bailey forced to quit I Must Everly Get Me Out of Here. That's because he broke the show's COVID bubble. COVID ruins everything, doesn't it? Don't let it, folks. Daily Express headline claims UK troops are to patrol French beaches. This is part of a united effort to tackle the migrant crisis. Too little, too late, I would say. But on the front of the Mail, Macron's none to UK boots on French beaches. So those 2 newspapers at odds there. Boris has tonight told Emmanuel Macron that he risks another Channel tragedy unless he stops blocking UK help to patrol French beaches. British troops could reportedly be on the ground in France as early as Monday. And the ultimate royal drama revisited. The publication asks, so who did cheat first, Charles or Diana? And to be honest, I am there for that. I'm there for that content. And the star, Madonna, gets stuck under her bed. This was an incredible picture, actually. I saw it earlier today. I know everyone wants to slag her off. I say, if you look that good at over 60, then get your bum out, Madonna. Well done. My superstar panel back now. The political commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the journalist and broadcaster Stam Dowler. Now, the last thing Boris Johnson needs is his COVID-obsessive detractors critiquing whether or how he chooses to wear a mask. First, he was tormented for mistakenly going maskless for, in his words, barely 30 seconds during a visit to Hexham Hospital at the start of the month. Then he came under fire after being spotted without one on a train from Manchester. And now the grass been left of watching him in the theatre for any slip-up, quite literally. So check this out. The director and writer Ollie Norton-Smith, who needs to get a life, took this snap of the PM watching Macbeth at the Almeida Theatre on Tuesday. He claimed Boris took his mask off when the lights went down, adding it takes a special arrogance and ignorance to disregard simple rules to keep people safe. But Dominic Samuels, there is no rule, there is no law that says we have to wear a mask in a theatre. It's down to personal choice.
No, there's not. And people want to keep pushing this stuff for this bizarre psychological control exercise that so many people, like that guy who posted that ridiculous tweet, seem to want to perpetuate and force on people. And in my opinion, I don't think Boris Johnson is a fan of all of this theatre, especially the mask theatre.
He's been forced into it, right?
Exactly, which is why he goes around without one.
Forced into it, though.
So do I.
I wish he'd just tear off the mask and say, I'm done.
I think the first thing to be said is the theatre said the rules will not be enforced, as it's a personal choice and they're going to be lax about it. So actually, he wasn't breaking any rules in the PM's defence. And actually, I think it's people who now, they're beginning to understand Boris does represent the country and they're trying to wonder how they're going to defeat him. They can't beat him electorally, so they're going after him personally. The deal is this: if you believe COVID exists and you want to help people keep safe, keep your mask on, but you can't bully other people into wearing masks. Like, I came here on the tube, I wear my mask because they ask you to.
I don't.
It's as simple as that.
I don't.
Sam, are you outraged over Boris taking his mask off when the lights go down in the theatre?
I think Boris has had a mask slip in the theatre and also metaphorically as well this week. His mask has slipped. And, you know, and he's been revealed as the buffoon that he is, unfortunately.
For not wearing a useless bit of flimsy cloth that doesn't even work.
Yeah, of course it does work.
It doesn't work.
There are plenty. It doesn't matter.
But
Sam, he is the Prime Minister.
It does matter. It does matter. And Sam, there is some evidence to show that surgical grade masks make a difference. The problem is, none of us are wearing masks properly.
Most of us aren't wearing N95s.
Well,
we're wearing cloth
totally.
and surgical.
And Sam, I know that your mask has been in your pocket. Really, okay. So you admit that
Just
this
an
is
example.
You admit this is just COVID theatre. That's why we wear masks.
Well,
It's just
no, but I
theatre.
mean, like
just theatre.
Sean just said just now, if you believe COVID is real, 250,000 deaths in this country.
I don't think he was saying it wasn't real. I think he's saying if you're worried about it.
It sounded like that.
Because actually, what did I say was I wore my mask on the way here on the tube because it makes other people feel comfortable.
And by the way,
it's a psychological exercise.
Fine.
If
it's a psychological exercise, then so
believe
let's do it.
COVID is real, but what we don't necessarily believe is that the freedom-smashing, draconian policies that have been introduced to deal with COVID all work. But Sam Dowler, Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, do stand by because coming up, my superstar panel are going to nominate today's Greatest Britain and Union Jack has. And why is the left's first instinct after the deaths of 27 migrants to stir up anti-British sentiment? Dr. Rakib Hassan has been investigating. He's uncancelled after we take a look at what's coming up on Monday's show.
Coming up Monday on Dan Wootton Tonight. Has the UK beaten COVID and are we emerging from the pandemic just as it gets worse in Europe? Positive Professor Carol Sikora will bring you the latest health headlines. GB News star Neil Oliver tackles the big issues of the day in The Outsider. Plus, I'll crown a Greatest Britain and Union Jack as you get to voice your opinion in the clash. And I'll break down the day's top stories with my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the Eye's senior reporter Benjamin Butworth and the social commentator Esther Kraku. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, returning 9 p.m. on Monday on GB News. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. The death of 27 migrants yesterday has prompted those who turned a blind eye to this escalating issue for months and years to ask, how did this happen? And who is to blame? As I said in my digest at the start of the show, I firmly believe Emmanuel Macron has blood on his hands for continuing to allow those boats to set off across the Channel on a daily basis. Predictably, the President and his government have tried to duck blame by characterising this tragedy as the result of discriminatory British policies. And the most ghoulish figures on the left might just let him get away with it. My guest tonight, Dr. Rakib Hassan, was one of the first to highlight this issue, writing, I have seen people blame the British people for the deaths in the English Channel, suggest that they are complicit with people smugglers, say that it doesn't matter what the British people think about national borders. This is what anti-British sentiment looks like. And Dr. joins me now. This is just so shocking, isn't it? That the first reaction is to try and blame Brits, and it usually is the left, isn't it, Rakib?
Dan, I think it's absolutely remarkable that much of the discourse surrounding the tragic deaths in the English Channel, they definitely fall into anti-British sentiment territory. There's people blaming fellow British citizens for having perfectly legitimate positions on matters of border security. You've also had people say that if their fellow citizens are not supportive of opening more safe routes, then they're complicit with people smugglers, people who are essentially putting the lives of those people crossing the English Channel in jeopardy. And I think it's quite remarkable. And I think it's actually deeply anti-democratic to say that British people are not entitled to have a perfectly legitimate, or you could say robustly conservative view when it comes to how our national border should be managed, that they're not entitled to that view. I think it's an authoritarian approach to our politics. And it does show that when a tragedy takes place, some people instinctively want to blame fellow British citizens. And I do think that falls into, I think that is a form of anti-British sentiment for sure.
I think you're completely right, actually, because, of course, the counter-argument is that the left who want more routes to be opened are actually encouraging the people smugglers, because I'm absolutely convinced, Rakib, that the consequence would be more of these perilous crossings from Africa into France. So the left really have to think about the consequences when they suggest that we should just open the borders and allow more safe passages, because it's the wider ecosystem that actually will create more death, more misery, and will embolden the people smugglers. And that is not humane.
Absolutely. I've been saying for some time that the National Crime Agency, for example, needs to be given a greater amount of resources to clamp down on these people smuggling infrastructures, which very much exist in the UK. I think something that's been missing from this particular situation, or rather the commentary on this particular situation, is how poorly treated some people are by the French policing authorities. And out of desperation, they do look to cross the English Channel. So it's quite remarkable that members of the British left, they don't want to discuss how French law enforcement are implicated in terms of how the way they're treating certain people, how that's pushing them towards making this perilous journey, and rather that they would want to blame the UK government. Of course, we can have a broader discussion in terms of how British-French relations, because there's a great deal of tension, how that's reduced the scope for cooperation in terms of reducing the chances of such tragedies taking place. But that would require a degree of nuance that many people on the British left are not looking to really bring to the table.
You're right. Dr. Akiva-san, fascinating analysis as ever. Thank you for joining us on Uncancelled. We'll speak to you again very soon. But it's now time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. And with me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, Sean Bailey, former Tory mayoral candidate, and the journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. So, Dominique, who's your greatest Britain nominee tonight?
Mine is J.K. Rowling, after her address was doxed by a group of trans activists that were protesting outside of her house, and made sure that her address was clearly visible. She's been harangued, she's been bullied, she's being harassed, but I stand by her because she's standing up for the rights of women, essentially, and that should always be supported.
OK, absolutely. Sean Bailey, your nomination?
Mine is the British Armed Forces. They had a tough time recently. I actually happen to be honorary colonel for the Royal Regiment Fusiliers, so I'm slightly biased. But we have a new Ranger Regiment coming on board, which will be able to work with populations across the world to support them to deliver. But the important thing, they're going to fight alongside them where necessary and carry out those humanitarian duties that this country is so well known for. So the British Armed Forces.
OK, Sam Dowler, your nomination?
I feel bad after that. Mine is Theresa May, bringing back the Maybot on stage, winning Backbencher of the Year. Come back, Theresa, all is forgiven. Your version of Brexit was the one we wanted.
Really?
Sorry about that one.
Really? Gosh, you're definitely a Ramona, aren't you?
I am.
Well, look, I'm going to go with Sean Bailey there.
You always win.
I think the British Army's Ranger Regiment sounds absolutely fascinating, capable of fighting alongside allies on four fronts. That's what we need, absolutely. Union jackass time now. Dominique, your nomination.
Mine is France for, quite frankly, not doing enough to stop the migrant boats coming across the channel. They've been very arrogant and they're continually attacking the UK, and I can't stand Emmanuel Macron. So, yeah, mine's France. Do more, France.
Sean Bailey, your nomination.
Mine is the Brits for removing the gender fields when you talk about who wins what, female and male artists. I think it's really important. I think they're damaging the rights of women who have a very hard struggle in that particular industry. And of course, this decision was made by a man who has no idea
of course.
The traumas that women go through to do that. And it's part of the wider story. If we remove these things, we are damaging the future of women. And some of these things have been very hard fought for by women. And I think it's really, really a bad idea to do this.
I think you're completely right, Sean, actually. I crunched the numbers on this. And if you look over the years, there have been no British group winners at the Brit Awards, apart from 5 Star and Little Mix, that have even included a female.
And of course, 5 Star had men in the group as well.
Of course they did. So this is going to be bad for women. I think it's a terrible decision. Sam, your nomination for Union Jack.
Can I just say that the Grammys did do away with the gender-specific categories in 2012.
And that was a mistake as well.
And it wasn't damaging then either. Mine is Carl Rittenhouse for basically being sucked in by the Republicans into being a political pawn for them, going straight down to see Donald Trump, being
What's wrong with that?
asked because he... What?
The Democrats, Joe Biden, they all attacked him, defamed him. It was Republicans and the right that stood up for Carl Rittenhouse.
He murdered 2 people. Basically,
well, legally, he didn't murder them. No, that's factually incorrect. Murder's a legal term.
The court acquitted him. I would take that back. I would take that back because there's been a lot of people in the media in the US where there's been a suggestion that Kyle Rittenhouse could actually sue them for claiming that he
sue all of them for defamation,
well, he obviously
including Joe Biden.
I would take that back.
I take it back. He was acquitted.
Sues you.
He was acquitted by a court of law, but we aren't.
Yeah, but that's the ultimate. A jury of his peers acquitted him. That is the ultimate.
Oh, and a completely unbiased judge as well.
That's the justice system,
who was completely.
You either believe in it or not.
We could say that about so many.
He is not a murderer.
The judge didn't
according
make the decision. The jury.
The law. Well, look, I'm actually going to go with Dominique.
Oh, yay!
The Union Jack has clearly today, end of the week, is France, because they were playing politics with the migrant crisis, and 27 people ended up dead. And that is despicable. The French government have blood on their hands. Emmanuel Macron should hold his head in shame. And I think, yes, we've got a lot wrong, but France has exacerbated this situation. Dominique Samuels, Sean Bailey, Sam Dowler, thank you so much for being my superstar panel this Thursday night. I have loved your company this week. I'm back Monday at 9 p.m. Mark Dolan is here tomorrow, but next it's Headliners. Good night.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Earlier today, the Met Office named Storm Arwen. We're particularly concerned about the strength of the wind, especially later tomorrow and into Saturday morning. There will also be some snow in places from this storm system. It's coming in from the north, so it's bringing in colder air. But it's really the winds really picking up later on Friday. Those isobars really squeezing together initially across Scotland, but increasingly further south. Some very strong winds during Friday night. Back to tonight, and the winds are picking up and bringing some rain across much of the UK. But ahead of that rain, clear skies will allow a fairly extensive frost across East Anglia and the south east. Temperatures may actually start to rise a little by dawn as the cloud spills in. It's going to be a cold day on Friday and a fairly grey morning with outbreaks of rain across much of England and Wales. Brighter skies follow, but so do the strong winds and increasingly snow showers over northern Scotland. In fact, that snow turning more and more persistent over northern Scotland, mostly over hills, but even at low levels there could be some, and routes like the A9 will be particularly treacherous with those strong winds making for blizzards. There'll be a bit of brightness in the afternoon, but it's not going to feel warm. Those winds are the biggest cause for concern widely across northern and western areas. Later on Friday, gusts of 50 to maybe 65 miles an hour, and an amber Met Office warning in place for the northeast, where gusts of 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little more in some places during Friday evening and into Saturday morning. There is a warning for the snow as well. Those kind of winds could cause some structural damage, certainly make for some disruption on the roads, potentially cause some power issues also. There will be this zone of wet weather then sinking south on Friday night. That will still have some snow mixed in, mostly hills, but there could be a little bit at lower levels, so that's an extra hazard. Details of that snow on Saturday still uncertain. It does look as if there won't be much at low levels, and if there is, it'll melt fairly quickly. But still a cold wind blowing on Saturday. The weather warnings are all on the Met Office website. Bye for now.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our